You have 800 friends on Instagram. You get notifications every few minutes. Your phone never stops buzzing. And yet, right now, millions of Americans feel completely alone. Not alone in an empty room. Alone in a crowded one. In 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General stood up and said something remarkable. He declared loneliness a national health emergency. Not obesity. Not smoking. Loneliness. He compared its damage to your body to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15. Every single day. So how did we get here? We have more ways to connect than any generation in human history. So why are we lonelier than ever? And is the same technology that's isolating us also the thing that could save us? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what's happening to the American mind and what you can actually do about it. Let's start with how we actually got here, because this didn't happen overnight. 50 years ago, people belonged to things. Bowling leagues, church groups, unions, neighborhood clubs. Sociologists call these places the third place. Not home, not work, but the place in between where community happened almost by accident. Those third places have been quietly disappearing for decades. Religious attendance has dropped. Civic clubs have emptied out. And more people live alone today than at almost any point in American history. Add remote work into the mix, and even the office, the last accidental community many people had, started to vanish too. No more hallway chats. No more lunch breaks with coworkers. Just a laptop screen and a closed door. So people didn't stop wanting connection. The places where connection used to happen just quietly disappeared. And into that gap walked technology. Now let's look at the numbers, because they are staggering. Roughly half of all adults in the United States report measurable levels of loneliness. That's not a small group having a hard time. That's half the country. Your coworker. Your neighbor. Maybe even you. Back in 1990, only about 1% of Americans said they had 0 close friends. Today, that number has jumped to somewhere around 17%. 17 out of every 100 people you know might not have a single close friend. And it's not just about friend count. Nearly half of Americans say their existing relationships feel hollow, like nobody actually knows them. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely unseen. That's the quiet, invisible part of this crisis. Even at work, this shows up. Roughly 1 in 10 employees say they feel lonely often or always on the job. And income makes it worse. Americans earning under $30,000 a year report loneliness at nearly double the rate of people earning over $100,000. Because connection takes time, and time is a luxury that not everyone can afford. This isn't just an emotional problem. It's a physical one. Chronic loneliness raises your risk of heart disease by nearly 30%. It raises your risk of stroke by even more. In older adults, it's linked to about a 50% higher risk of dementia. Researchers have found that being chronically lonely can shorten your life by years. That's why the Surgeon General used the smoking comparison. It sounds dramatic until you look at the data. Loneliness isn't just sad. It's dangerous. And it's not just costing us in years of life. Loneliness is costing the economy too. Employers lose billions of dollars every year to stress-related absenteeism connected to loneliness. Isolated older adults are responsible for billions more in extra healthcare spending. Loneliness isn't just a feeling. It's a public health crisis with a price tag attached. Now here's the part that surprises most people. You'd think older adults, the ones who lost spouses, who retired, who live alone, would be the loneliest group in America. But they're not. Young adults are. Multiple studies now show that adults under 35 report feeling lonely more often than adults over 65. Gen Z, the most digitally connected generation in history, is also statistically the loneliest. Let that sink in for a second. The generation that grew up with a smartphone in their hand is the one struggling the most to feel connected. How is that possible? Quick question for you, and I actually want you to answer this in the comments. When was the last time you had a real conversation, not a text thread, an actual conversation with a friend? Hold that thought, because we're about to find out why that question is harder to answer than it should be. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When Americans are asked what they think is driving the loneliness crisis, technology is the single most blamed factor. Not lack of time, not busy schedules, technology. And when you look at the research, it's easy to see why. Studies have found that heavy social media users are more than twice as likely to report feeling lonely compared to light users. But here's where it gets interesting, because the story isn't quite that simple. Researchers have found that how you use social media matters just as much as how much you use it. Passive scrolling, just watching other people's lives without interacting, is strongly linked to higher loneliness. You know the feeling. Scrolling through vacation photos, engagement announcements, perfect-looking dinners at 11 at night, alone on your couch. That's not connection. That's comparison. And comparison breeds isolation, not community. On the other hand, active engagement, actually messaging someone, commenting, planning to meet up in real life, can genuinely reduce loneliness. So the tool isn't necessarily the villain. It's how we're using it. But there's a newer, stranger chapter to this story. As real-world loneliness has grown, millions of people have started turning to something unexpected for connection. Artificial intelligence. AI companion apps have exploded in popularity over the past few years, growing by hundreds of %. Some of these apps now have tens of millions of monthly users. People are having daily conversations with chatbots. Some are calling them their best friend. Some are even holding virtual weddings with them. On one hand, psychologists say these tools can genuinely reduce feelings of isolation for some people, especially those who have no one else to talk to at 2 in the morning. On the other hand, the vast majority of psychologists surveyed say they're deeply concerned about this trend. Why? Because an AI chatbot is designed to agree with you, to validate you, to never challenge you the way a real friend or a real therapist would. That feels good in the moment. But real relationships aren't supposed to only feel good. They're supposed to grow you. A friend who never disagrees with you isn't actually a friend. They're a mirror. And too much time looking only in a mirror can quietly reinforce the very isolation you were trying to escape. There's actually a name for this in psychology. Researchers call it the agreeableness trap. The AI is built to keep you engaged, and agreement keeps you coming back. Growth, real growth, usually comes from a little friction, from someone who loves you enough to push back. So what's the fix? Interestingly, a growing number of Americans are already finding their own answer. Researchers have noticed a cultural shift they're now calling friction maxing. It's a fancy term for a very simple idea. On purpose, choosing the harder, slower, more inconvenient version of human connection. Joining an in-person pottery class instead of watching a video about pottery. Going to a weekly book club instead of scrolling a book summary account. Calling a friend instead of texting them an emoji. It's inconvenient. It takes effort. And that's exactly the point. Real connection was never supposed to be frictionless. Friction is where the relationship actually gets built. So let's talk about what actually works, based on the research. First, structure beats spontaneity. A recurring weekly class or a standing dinner with a friend works better than waiting around for motivation to strike. The structure removes the hardest part, which is simply starting. Second, quality beats quantity. You don't need 50 acquaintances. You need 2 or 3 people who actually know what's going on in your life. Third, voice and in-person contact beat text every time. A 5-minute phone call can do more for your mental state than an hour of scrolling through group chats. Fourth, be the one who reaches out first. Everyone is waiting for someone else to make the first move. So be the person who breaks that standoff. Send the text. Make the call. Extend the invitation. And fifth, technology can still help as long as it's a bridge and not a destination. Use apps to plan a real dinner. Use group chats to organize a real hike. The moment technology stops pointing you toward real humans and starts replacing them, that's the moment it stops helping. Here's the honest truth. Loneliness isn't a personal failure. It's not something wrong with you. It's the predictable result of a society we built around convenience, speed, and screens instead of around people. But loneliness is also responsive. It's a signal, just like hunger or thirst. And signals can be answered. So maybe today, instead of opening another app, you send one real text. Hey, want to grab coffee this week? That's it. That's the whole move. Small, unimpressive, and completely capable of changing your week. If this video made you think differently about your own phone habits, that's exactly why I make these videos. I break down the psychology behind the things shaping our daily lives, one topic at a time. So if you want more of this, hit subscribe, because next week we're diving into an even stranger corner of the human mind. Drop a comment and tell me, when was the last time you had a real, uninterrupted conversation with someone you care about? I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.